Coming up on the Empowered Woman podcast.
You have to worry about what is the valuation of your company, because at the end of the day, that's what a buyer is looking at, is what's the valuation. And without getting too technical, and getting into EBITDA and all of that goodness and what multiples of.
Welcome to the Empowered Woman podcast, the #1 show on visibility strategies for women entrepreneurs. If you want to get empowered to be seen, stand out on social media, stages, TV, and more to make an impact with your voice and business, you're in the right place. I'm so glad that you're here. My name is Marcia Spurk, and I'm your host, professional singer and visibility strategist. Welcome again, and let's dive into today's episode.
Burnout doesn't just exhaust you, it silently erodes your most important relationships. Aurora Method Coaching helps high-achieving women uncover the root beliefs driving their relationship conflicts and burnout and move from emotional reactivity to calm, clarity, and confidence. Ready to restore connection? Book your free consultation at meetwithtracy.coach.
Well, hi, Susan. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Hi, Marcia. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm super excited to share you with my audience. Why don't you tell us who you are and what you do?
Well, I am a serial entrepreneur first and foremost. I've been an entrepreneur for probably almost 40 years now.
Yeah.
I've founded and probably about 7 businesses, and I've exited 5 of them successfully. So I have a pretty good track record.
Yeah, that's incredible. Now, I want to hear some of the stories of all these businesses.
Yeah.
We would have to have many conversations to cover them all. But I would love to hear maybe, one of the stories that getting you started, or why do you believe this is something so prominent in your life of starting the businesses and starting new businesses and exiting them successfully?
Yeah, well, I always knew that. So when I graduated many moons ago, back in the early 1980s from college, I graduated with a degree in naval architecture. And I actually went and started, my first job out of college was designing nuclear submarines. I was an engineer.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah. So if you look at my career trajectory, and in those early days, I was still working for, companies. I went from designing submarines and aircraft carriers, then on to Disney to manage a creative division. I know that seems like a weird sequitur, but it sort of worked. And then I also, let me just silence my phone here. I also did a stint with Nestle. But one of the ribbons that weaves through my life is that we moved a lot, because I had young children, like so many women find themselves, trying to do everything, right? Have a career and figure out how to raise a family. And I am the risk taker in the family. I'm the one that's like, yes, let's do this, and I'm usually a little overconfident and very optimistic. So in my 30s and 40s, that was a good package to have. And we ended up moving around a lot. And I found myself always having to pick up and start over, meet new people, make a new network. And these are all really important things for, building your own business.
Yeah.
So that became one of my flexes, that I got very good at that, very good at getting in quickly, building a network, finding out what I needed, what resources I needed, and asking for help and using that as a strength. So, went along the way and launched a couple of businesses and kind of kept pivoting. With every time we moved, I pivoted maybe a few degrees so that maybe it wasn't a direct connection. Like I never stayed quite in the same industry, and I pivoted and shifted a little bit. And so fast forward to the last 15 years or so, one of the most successful businesses I had launched was a college consulting business. We were moving overseas, and I was ready for another change. And so I kind of looked around. I had 2 kids that were just finishing up high school, and the college admissions process was very real to me. And it seemed like there was some open white space there. So I decided I'm going to try this. So I got some credentials and wanted to do something that only required maybe just a laptop and where I could move around and still meet. So I was meeting with kids on Zoom and Skype before Skype and Zoom took over Skype, before it was even a thing. And I built an incredible consulting business that became an international business that I was able to sell 5 years ago. So, and I literally started with nothing. I didn't even have exactly the right credentials. I just had a lot of passion and I knew that it was something that I really believed in. So these are all like good ingredients for
Yeah.
starting businesses. And then on to my most recent, and probably the something that I'm most proud of, but also I'm also like sweating bullets. Like it's scary as hell, you
Mhm.
know, whenever you start a new venture and you're spending your own money
Yeah.
and you're building new networks. And I took a real jump on this one. So when I sold my consulting business 5 years ago, I I took about 2 years to kind of figure out. I had also turned 60, so I'm now 66. So like I'm not 40 something, I'm not 30
Mhm.
something. So I'm much more tenured into my years in terms of
Yeah.
launching a kind of audacious, let's start a media business, Susan.
Uh-huh.
Like, why not? And some of my friends were like, what are you doing? Like, are you crazy? But my kids and my husband, who's been with me for over 40 years now, is very supportive and they're like, do it. And I chose media because when I turned 61, 62, 63, while I was kind of searching, I was looking, where's the white space? And that's something
Mhm.
I think that entrepreneurs also, it's something that I've learned over the years. Like, look
Mhm.
for where there's some space, where
Yeah.
it's not so overcrowded. You either have to have something so unique or you have to be so special
Mhm.
to get into a crowded field. But what about the fields that aren't crowded? And you might say, like media, oh my gosh, everybody's shutting down. All the legacy media is
Mhm.
shutting down. But for me, there was something very specific that was missing, and it was that voice for women over 50, and
Mhm.
it was in mainstream media. There are a lot of great influencers out there right now, and products. Menopause is having a whole
Yeah.
moment and
Yeah.
revolution. But it was the smart writing that I was after. It was the cultural hot takes that mattered to us, that mattered to a 60-year-old.
Mhm.
So that's what I was missing. And so I leaned into that and I started doing a lot of due diligence, as you would before you launch some kind of big,
Yeah.
kind of big effort. And I found that there really wasn't a lot of space. So I launched Provoked Magazine a little over 18 months ago. And it's like I said, every morning I wake up and I'm like, yes, I've got this. And then at
Mhm.
night I go to bed with complete existential dread. Like, what am I doing? Like most founders do.
Yes.
So
Oh
that's
my
that's
gosh.
sort of my 40-year trajectory in a nutshell. I've done some cool things along the way. I did play professional poker for a little while, and
Mhm.
people kind of look at that and they're like, "Wait, what?" And we were actually living, of all places, in Moscow, Russia, and we lived there. We left the States when my children were 4 years old and 6 years old, and it was supposed to be a 2-year stint, and we stayed for almost 10 years. And I
Wow.
sort of lost myself there. And
Mm.
I ended up, I did a stint with Nestle while I was there, which was entrepreneurial. I actually introduced the chocolate chip cookie to the Russian Federation, and
Ooh.
which was very cool, a very like special project. And then I started a school uniform business, which I was able to sell. But in the meantime, while I kind of lost myself, while the expat women were playing, bunco or having bridge lessons, I was playing poker professionally. So, and poker, it's interesting because people ask me all the time, like, how did that relate to being an entrepreneur? And it
Mhm.
actually is a really good training ground for being an entrepreneur because you have
Ooh.
to assess risk at like speed dating. It's like, am I
Mm.
going to play this hand? Am I not going to play this hand? And you have to make
Yeah.
these split decisions and you literally have to go all in. Like that's the term, right?
Yeah.
That's where it came from. You
Yeah.
push all
Yeah.
into the table and say, I'm betting on this. You also have
Mhm.
to have good emotional intelligence, which is a really required trait to be, a good entrepreneur. You have to be able to size up a room. And then the last thing, I use this metaphor, especially for women entrepreneurs, where I wasn't embarrassed to take a seat at the poker table. When
Mhm.
you take your seat and you sit down with a bunch of, I was playing with mostly men,
Yeah.
and it's still like that in the business world today. Women, we're underfunded.
Yep.
We're the last ones to be invited to sit at a table, and that's something that it helped build up that confidence and that resiliency. That I've got this. I'm going to take a seat
Yeah.
at the head of the table.
Oh my gosh. So many amazing things to unpack there. And I love the
the poker piece here and how there's a huge parallel with entrepreneurship, all the different things that you did and finding the white space. I love that you were always looking for opportunity, and it had to do with your own personal journey and where you were at, right?
Yeah.
Finding those opportunities and where you could meet people with what you knew or what you were experiencing and helping them at. That is just the epitome of what being an entrepreneur is. I would love to talk a little bit more about the media company, but before, since you mentioned exiting, because I know that's a hot topic as well, and exiting successfully,
Yeah.
especially because I know that is not the easiest thing. Can you speak more to that since you've experienced it several times for people that are considering it or maybe have no clue what that would even entail?
Yeah. So if you built a business, so some people build a business and they're just doing it, and they're the key person. It's called key man, right? They're the key
Yeah.
man, whether it's a consulting business, and I'll circle back on that in a minute because that I
Okay.
tried to mitigate that key man risk. And they're just doing it because they have a product that they've created and they love. Or my advice is when you go into a business, you have an idea of if this is something you would want to sell at some point, or you would want to exit. When we say exit, that's code for sell, right?
Yeah.
As opposed to just retire and shut it down.
Yeah.
And some of my businesses, I've gone in with the idea of selling it. And when I started Admission Smarts, which was my college consulting business, I didn't know what I was doing. But I knew from the beginning, again, I have that entrepreneurial spirit. It's in my DNA. And I knew that if I grow this and do this right, I'd like to have an international presence. I'd like to be a national authority. And I'd like to sell this at some point. So there are certain things that you do along the way to make sure that you can sell it. And that's diversification of revenue streams. It's making sure there is no key risk person, right? So if my name were on it, it was Susan Dabbar Admissions Consulting, that would have immediately signaled to a buyer, well, I'm not Susan Dabbar. How am I going to sell this? So I specifically picked a domain name and didn't use my name. And as you start building, you bring in other colleagues that can sit at a C-suite level with you, so that if somebody wants to come in and buy it, they're not buying you, they're buying the company and the expertise that you've built. So those are a couple of things. And then you have to worry about what is the valuation of your company, because at the end of the day, that's what a buyer is looking at, is what's the valuation. And without getting too technical, and getting into EBITDA and all of that goodness, and what multiples of the way when you go to sell a business, you're compared with other businesses in your category, basically. And it's almost like buying a house where they look at comps, right? But if you're in a niche where there aren't a lot of comps, then it's harder. And it's harder for people, it's harder for you to identify what the value might be. And you might be grossly overvaluing your company, and you might be grossly undervaluing your company. And a lot of that, what's your IP? Do you have intellectual property that has worth? For me, my consulting business, and this is interesting for a lot of people out there who have consulting businesses and selling coaching and things. It's your pipeline, right? It's your client pipeline. But did they come in because of the brand, or did they come in because it was me? And so that becomes a gray area, and you don't necessarily get credit for that pipeline. It's a nice to have, but it's not a line item in evaluation. So these are the kinds of things you have to be careful of. But it basically means that you sell your business, and there's a lot of different architecture that goes along with what that might look like. You might have to stay on as a consultant. You might hand everything over. There might be a long protracted period of your payout. But there's all kinds of things. And those are all part of the negotiation at the end.
I love that. And how did you learn all of this? Was it along the way? Did you have anyone helping specifically? Because I know there are companies that come in for the valuation process too.
There are a lot of, my daughter is a banker, so that really helps. And she does, for the early part of her career, she did, M&A for one of the big banks. So she was always buzzing in my ear, like, Mom, this is what you need to be thinking about. This is valuation. But I'm a lifelong learner. And even with building Provoked now, I am reading all the time. I'm always asking other business founders. I'm always studying exit plans in my space. So about 2 years before I was ready to sell Admission Smarts, I started studying and talking to other people in in the fringes and adjacent to those kinds of consulting businesses, how did you do it? Did you use a company? Did you do it yourself? Did you have people? I ended up getting very lucky. I had people coming to me and asking, like, so it wasn't as hard as, I didn't have to, go and solicit. So
Yeah. Well, but that's also a reflection probably of the network that you have built and the different relationships throughout the different businesses
yeah,
that you have had.
somebody gave me a new colleague of mine who owns a newsletter gave me some really good advice, and she said to me just a few months ago, and I'm just starting out with Provoked. She said,
Mm-hmm.
or identify who could possibly buy your business right now and make sure you get in front of them and you court them over the next 8 to 10 years.
Wow.
And I thought that was really, really good advice. And I'd never heard it, like, maybe I did that intuitively last time around, but this time
I
around,
see.
I'm being more deliberate about it, about that.
Okay. And interesting how there's an intentionality, and it's a long game too, because
It
the
is.
more I've heard about the whole exit thing and people saying, I want to sell my business in 5 years. And some people sometimes don't even realize that it takes that long
Yeah.
or more, right? To get
Yeah.
to a point where you have all the ducks in a row, like what you're saying. It's a long process. Thank you so much for sharing that. Okay, so let's talk more about the magazine and the media. Give us more details about the different components of it and who you're featuring and what it all entails. I'm excited to hear.
Hey, let me ask you a question. Would you like to be my next guest on the Empowered Woman podcast? Do you have a story you'd like to share? Want more visibility for your business on a show ranked in the top 0.5% in the world? Well, then head on over to martasburg.com/podcast guest for more information.
Yeah, so Provoked Magazine. So I specifically picked the name Provoked because we're voicey, and that was what I was missing. When I looked around at the media landscape, it was there was nothing that was spicy. There was nothing that it like got me going. There was nothing that there isn't a lot of writing out there that speaks to women specifically, that where we can get into messy conversations, if you will, and kind of build community around it. And that's what I wanted to build. So I decided early on that I was going to be a newsletter forward magazine, digital magazine, which means, so one of my big assets, and I use the word assets because it's going to be a big part of my portfolio when I do maybe go to exit years from now, is the newsletter. And there's a lot to running a good newsletter. It's almost its own separate business. So we have a newsletter that your readers and anybody that's interested, our content is primarily for women over 50. We do have a lot of 40 somethings also kind of, they want to see what's coming at them. But our core reader is probably about 55 to 60 years old. And we don't talk about politics at all, but we are, but feminism is definitely on the table. And we talk about wellness, culture, life, everything that has to do with life, dating, grief, relationships, and money. Those are our core pillars. And then we also have a humor column, which is very popular because, again, like, we want to laugh. So you can sign up. You go to Provoked Magazine. You can sign up for our newsletter. It's free. We publish every Thursday morning. You get a newsletter, and then we have a premium membership that also includes our book club, and we do community events. I do calls with entrepreneurs. I do calls with wannabe writers. The other cool thing that we do at Provoked is that we use user-generated content, as well as I have a bench of professional journalists also. So I have my bench writers, which are our professional journalists, and they're women ages 45 to 85 who write for us, who have bylines in all of the best publications, from the New York Times to the Atlantic, to People Magazine. And then we also have a side door where if you want to come in and you just have one story in you, that you can submit a pitch. And and I pay all of our writers, even if you come in the side story and you have never had a byline before, because I'm very big on empowering women and taking your seat at the table and getting paid for your work.
Yeah. Ooh, I love that.
So,
Definitely have to put that out well, we'll have it in the show notes anyways for people to check it out, but especially for the founders that maybe have that one topic and that one story that they want to contribute. And I just want to comment on how I could see your passion come through as you started describing it, like how you lit up and talking about it. I can tell that it's something that you're really excited about. So that's amazing.
Yeah, I
Congratulations on
am.
putting it out there.
It's like I'm in founder mode. So this room is
Hmm.
that I'm sitting in right now is my office. It's actually my dining room, but I've taken over because my office is in the back of the house, and this is bigger because I'm sprawled. Like I've got like a
Yeah.
10-foot table and I'm sprawled all over it. And
Yeah.
it's lonely. It can be lonely being a founder. I have a big team, but we're all remote and
Hmm.
everybody's a
Yeah.
freelancer, and that's another, this is a great time to be building a business. You
Yeah.
can work remotely. The freelance economy is thriving right now,
Hmm.
especially if you're hiring. You can have your pick of really top talent because
Yeah.
AI is like a subject for another day. But AI is, there's a lot of fear about jobs
Yes.
being taken for writers, for artists, and I
Hmm.
hire
Hmm.
all of these kinds of people. And then the other thing I wanted to touch base with you on is because I think that this is your niche is
Hmm.
storytelling.
Yeah.
Storytelling is so important to us. And that was one of the things that I really wanted to embrace with Provoked. And a lot of our articles are stories. They're women telling their
Hmm.
stories and sharing their experience on a very specific moment that will resonate with everybody else in our audience.
Yes.
And sometimes those are our best articles. So it really
Yes.
goes back to the power of storytelling.
Absolutely. I definitely advocate for that. And
Yeah.
my listeners are the really love the stories. They have to because that's what we cover on here. So connecting with Provoked is definitely going to be a natural progression. I'm excited to be sharing this and having people find out this amazing channel and opportunity, regardless of age, right? Like what you're saying, even if they're not at that age range that you just mentioned, we could be looking forward. I'm actually turning 40 in a few months, so it's
Yeah, well, you
relevant
should be
regardless.
subscribing them because a lot of our
I will.
articles are our wellness articles. We always have a little bit of a slant, like, it's why
Hmm.
women. So it's
Hmm.
two-tiered, right? The first question I ask as editor in chief is, you know, Marta, like, why are you writing this? Why is this for women? And then
Hmm.
why for women right now? And why midlife women, right?
Hmm.
And so all of our stories kind of lean into that framework. And we often like to have a villain in our story, which makes it a little more provoked. Is it big pharma?
Hmm.
Is it media? Is it
Hmm.
the fast fashion? Is it, who's the
Yeah.
villain? Where are we? What are we trying to capture here so that we can kind of build that tension in the story that we're
Yeah.
trying to build and get the comments going because our comments our comments get really messy and it's a really
Hmm.
important part of our editorial engine,
Yeah.
if you will. And a lot of
Hmm.
publications have turned comments off, but we
Right.
we encourage those messy conversations because that's part of being I think, a woman, like we have opinions and our opinions, we don't want to be quieted.
Yes.
We don't want to be invisible. We want our opinions to be heard. And so I give women a platform to do that. And a few
Absolutely.
men. They come
Yeah.
into.
That's good. I love that. Well, I'm so excited to share this with my network and so excited for you in this project and in the launch and how things are going. Before I have you share again how people can connect or find out more about the magazine and subscribe, but also connect with you personally, I like asking all my guests what I call my $1,000,000 question. Are you ready?
Oh no, I'm scared.
No, it's an easy one. You will knock it out of the park. Susan, what is an empowered woman to you?
An empowered woman to me is a woman who can walk into any room with her head held high and not be afraid to speak.
I love that. Whether it be a poker room, professional poker room, or
Any room.
college.
You walk into church,
Listen.
you walk
Yeah.
into a political protest, you walk into a dinner
Yeah.
party, any room.
Love it. So good. Thank you so much. So how can tell us again how people can subscribe and also if they want to connect with you personally, do you hang out anywhere?
I'm always working, so I hang out in my inbox.
Perfect.
But yeah, so you can contact me. It's all on the website. I would say the best place to
Hmm.
go is hit me up on the website. Well, in
Okay.
Instagram, you can find me on Instagram at
Perfect.
Provoked by Susan on Instagram is my
Mhm.
handle, and
Love it.
I'm very voicey and share my opinions freely on Instagram. And then our main website where you can sign up for our newsletter, and I encourage you all to do that, is provokedmagazine.com. Um,
Wonderful.
yeah.
Love it. All right. I'll make sure and have all that in the show notes, and I will definitely follow you on Instagram. I want to be provoked by Susan.
Yeah, well,
That's so
there's a lot to talk about out there for sure. Yeah, there's a lot of provoking
Absolutely.
going on.
Mhm. Well, thank you so much, Susan. This was wonderful. It was great to get to know you and your work.
Well, I appreciate it. And thank you so much for having me on. And I'll look forward to hopefully engaging with your audience. I'm excited. I love talking to entrepreneurs. So hit me up.
Thanks so much for tuning in today. I hope this episode empowered you. And if you enjoyed the show, please join the Empowered Woman community on Facebook and share with friends or leave a review on iTunes so more people can discover this empowering message. Until next time, bye.